an industrial consumer or as an individual consumer. Madam Speaker, in that bill, you are going to find itemized items which the customers are charged. Madam Speaker, one of those is the cost of diesel, because Kenya had entered into some agreement with private energy producers who install generators in many parts of this country, feeding into the national grid. Madam Speaker, the cost of diesel is very high, and this has been continuously been passed to the consumers. Madam Speaker, I think the time has come that the government of Kenya need to look at all these private arrangements that were entered long time ago that continue to cause sufferings in terms of payment of bills to the population of this country. Madam Speaker, the cost of electricity is high because there is a lot of operational expenses that are incurred by more than 5 corporations which are charged with generation and distribution of power in this country. My point, Madam Speaker, is that the Kenyan government needs to look at the viability and effectiveness of all these state corporations. Madam Speaker, we have the Geothermal Development Corporation, we have Kenyan, we have Kenya Power, we have Kentraco, and these private producers. Madam Speaker, the time has come that we start looking at the viability of all these corporations and ask ourselves, are they necessary? Can they be consolidated? Can we reduce on the operation costs? Because, Madam Speaker, the cost of maintaining some of these corporations is what is causing the power bills to go up. My point, Madam Speaker, is that the energy sector needs to be looked afresh. Madam Speaker, we know there is a lot of solar energy in this country. Free sunshine. Madam Speaker, I ask the government of Kenya to turn and start looking at the renewable energy as alternative sources of power, because now hydro energy is becoming very expensive. Madam Speaker, I think we need to relook at the budgeting of all these state corporations and start redirecting their budget towards renewable energy, because Kenya Power can do it, Kenyan can do it, Kentraco can do it, nuclear energy, Madam Speaker. And I was very happy to note that they are on top gear, but they are looking at the long term. But for now, we need to address the issue of short term, because Kenyans are suffering. As we speak of high cost of living, we are also speaking of high cost of energy. The country has reached a point where now we have to be sober. We have to start deliberating on the key issues that are really affecting the citizens of this country. Madam Speaker, I think it is very important that we place upon the Ministry of Energy that they need to look at the policy on energy. Madam Speaker, as I said, this is a very important motion, and we all support it, but we ask that the policy on energy need to be looked afresh so that we address this matter, not addressing it piecemeal, not addressing only the reduction of bills, but also the cost of generating of power in this country, so that now we start directing our resources to the most cheap and viable source of electricity. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Endebess, Dr. Robert Bukose.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to contribute to this motion on reduction of the cost of electricity. Madam Speaker, you know that the cost of electricity has been rising. Right now, you find that when you buy tokens, you look at the tokens that you've been given, when the ones you bought last month at the same cost and the ones you bought this month at the same cost are actually different. There are less tokens compared with what you bought last month. And this has been necessitated basically more so by us sustaining a very unfair contractual agreements. This country has more than 280 megawatts of energy. Our consumption is around 220. But you ask yourself, we have more energy power, yet our consumption prices still continues going up. The cost of electricity, even for people to put up business within our country, is quite high. That is why you'll find that companies are even running away to other places where there are cheaper costs of electricity. And I think it's a high time the CS Energy looks at this cost of electricity and be able to remedy this situation. Madam Speaker, power purchase agreements that the government has entered, especially with independent power producers, are quite unfair. Because you look at especially diesel generators that were started some times back, where you enter into agreements that are lasting as close to 25 years. And if the government has to terminate them, then the compensation is very high. Yet we continue investing in other cheaper sources of energy, like geothermal. We continue investing in hydro. We continue investing in solar. And we are even in the process of investing in nuclear energy, which is even more cheaper. So I think it's very important, and I would want especially the Committee on Energy. We have institutions that have been funded by public coffers. For instance, GTC. GTC has been funded for many years, and they've had programs and projects which they have not been able to mature. For example, you look at a project like Silale power generation, which has scalped and coupled a lot of resources from the government. Yet up to date, we've not produced a single megawatt of energy. Yet we continue funding GTC. I think it's a high time that money for value for money is able to be looked into. We have other institutions like Kenyan, which have been doing very well. They set up hydroelectric power. They have done energy production. They've even gone into producing power in neighboring countries like Ethiopia at a lower cost. This is government institution that sells power at a cheaper cost compared with the high cost diesel generators, the high cost other forms of energy like wind energy, which actually couple we have the Loyangalani wind energy, which coupled a lot of money. And when you look at the Auditor General's report, it reports that there was signed contractual agreement in such a way that the government compensated the contractors at a loss. And I think the Auditor General has pointed out this, but nothing has yet been acted upon. I think it's very important that government agencies must be able to act and recover where we have losses. Madam Speaker, I think looking into all this, our country has not suffered as much as other countries. Look at South Africa, which has a lot of energy production, but they are always on power rationing. We've not had a serious power rationing within our region, but we've had vandalism as a result of as a result of maybe you have transformers being stolen, or you have faulty transformers which have been procured. I think all these areas now, I heard the head of state yesterday and more so the cabinet, prime cabinet, making statements that government officers will be held liable and responsible. I think that's the right direction in which this country should be able to go, so that any government officer who purchases transformers that are faulty, any government officer that makes the taxpayer lose money should be held personally liable. And I think these are areas that we are able to close up. Then we'll be able to make power efficient for our country. We'll be able to utilize power at a cheaper cost and make sure that we spur the industrial development within our region. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I want to support.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Langata, Honorable Felix Odiwuor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this motion. And I wanted to put it differently from the people I represent who live in the slums. In Langata, we have several slums. Hairas Ward, we have Kijiji, we have Bangladesh, Kuwinda, and these people cannot afford the cost of electricity as you speak. This leads to illegal connections. And immediately we have illegal connections. That's why for the past few months, we've had more than 15 fire cases in the constituency that has been caused by illegal connections. If the cost of power will be reduced, the people living in the slums would be able to afford electricity, and the illegal connections will be done away with. Apart from that, as we speak, Kenya Power have taken away more than 4 transformers out of the constituency just because they say there's legal connections. Yet we have people in the slums who can afford the electricity, and I'm also here to request the MD Kenya Power or whoever came to Hairas Ward and removed the transformers in the name of illegal connections to please, first, even before we have a lot of these discussions, to bring back the transformers so that the people can have electricity. It is very sad that in the city of Nairobi, people still use paraffin to light themselves up and provide light, when we are able to have everybody connected to electricity. I support this motion, and I want to really appreciate the Honorable Njeri for bringing it up here for discussions and debate. I support. Thank you.
The Honorable Member for Baringo County, Honorable Florence Chembatia.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I also want to join my colleagues in supporting this motion, and to thank my colleague for Laikipia for bringing this motion because it is so timely. And I also want to add that it's unless this country decides and have more ways of producing power, otherwise the electricity bills is going to skyrocket, because we have no any other way apart from the hydro way of producing power. We have several, but it is not so well managed. For instance, the solar, we have an authority called REREC, which is supposed to be managing green power and helping us to produce an extra power and probably synchronize it to the main grid. But if you look at the production levels, it is not enough for this country to consume to the level that we are able to minimize our bills. There is a lot of effect due to these high bills in this country, electricity bills, because when we depend mainly on the hydro, it means we can only produce enough when there is enough rains. That automatically affects even our productions in industrialization or industries, to the extent that every product that is being produced in Kenya today is so much expensive, and you are not able to produce more because of the cost. Even the cost of living. Like in my house, if I have 3 or 2 gadgets that I'm using electricity, like ironing and water pumping or something like that, it's going to cost me so much. And considering that there's a very high cost of living, electricity in this country must be managed by all means. And we should develop many other ways of producing power. And I encourage the government to look into it through the Ministry of Energy, that we also need to produce more wind power, tap into it, synchronize it into main grid, produce more of geothermal, and make sure that Kenyans are also getting value for the money they are paying for. Because it is one thing for all of us to be using this power, and it's another thing for all of us also to be struggling to survive because of the high cost of electricity bills. I want to say this is something and discussion that must be brought forward, and the ministry should take up the challenge by making sure that the electricity cost is brought down by all means. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Andrew Akuome, member for Karachuonyo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, I think what we are discussing today is very important, in the sense that nearly the last 2 weeks in Kenya has been a week of discussing the cost of living. And this high cost of living is partly caused by the cost of energy. Madam Speaker, the high tariff we have has a lot of negative effects to our economy and to the people living in Kenya. We all know that the cost of business and the cost of manufacturing has gone up so much that the prices must also respond to that high cost of electricity. Madam Speaker, let me say that because of this high cost of business and production, in particular manufacturing, a number of business people and industrialists have migrated from Kenya going to other countries with a very dangerous result that causes us to lose employment and indeed cause us to transfer employment, the potential employment we would have had in our country, to the other countries. I think it is important that all efforts must be made to reduce the cost. And because of this, I highly support the motion. And I had one of my colleagues referring to illegal connections. That's a direct result of the high cost of electricity. If you want electricity and it is purposely made impossible for you to get it, you are a human being, you will do all possible to get it. And those who are having illegal connections are doing so because they want to live like any other person. Madam Speaker, let me also just draw your attention to the independent producers of electricity. I begin to wonder whether these people are useful to Kenyans in the manner we expect and in the manner they supply their energy to the national grid. We are told that these people are paid very highly, but do they have that payment commensurate with what we get from them in terms of the energy they add to the national grid? It is important they are investigated in relation to their cost and their benefit to this nation, because this could be part of the cost of the high tariff we are paying, because the energy producers or the energy giver, KPLC, need to recover their costs. Madam Speaker, I highly support the bill, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this bill.
The Honorable Stephen Mogaka, member for West Mugirango. Doesn't seem to be there. The Honorable... Oh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this humble opportunity to contribute to this motion. And I thank the member who has brought this motion at a very timely moment. And on behalf of the people of West Mugirango, I want to support. Madam Speaker, electricity or energy is everything. It's the driver of our economy. And unless the cost of energy is stemmed, then the cost of production and consequently the cost of living will not be affordable. To achieve this, it is indeed important that we evaluate the production chain to ensure that there are no leakages and there is no hemorrhage which is transferred to the ultimate cost of electricity. And it is true that Kenya Power, being a monopoly, has been entering bilateral agreements with independent power producers and prefers purchasing the expensive energy first at the expense of the cheap and clean green energy that is generated by the geothermal, by Kenyan, and even wind power. The Ministry of Energy, Madam Speaker, needs to rise to the occasion. We cannot be relying on hydro, which was brought to this country during the colonial era. And fortunately, Kenya sits at the equator, where we enjoy 12-month sunshine. And it is real important that we consider as a country to do a radical shift from relying on hydro only and lay emphasis on solar energy. So much so that we also need to amend the construction laws of this country so that we make every unit that is constructed to have a provision for a sufficient solar panel that will provide sufficient energy for that household, as well as release the excess of that energy to the national grid. We must migrate from relying on these giant power producers in this country and go towards a small-scale power production where every household harvests energy using solar panels, utilizes what they need, and sells the excess to the national grid, so that we convert our current energy consumers from consumers to producers of energy. And it is really important that a country that is now 60 years old needs to look for ways of raising very cheap energy for driving the economy. Madam Speaker, if you notice, we have a crisis, particularly in the rural areas. From the West Mogrango, where I come, there has been a large-scale theft and vandalization of power transformers. And why is this happening? There obviously is a market for the oil within the transformers, as well as a market for second-hand transformers. And who are the consumers? I suspect that some of these illegal stolen transformers and oils are being recycled back and sold again to the very people who are supposed to procure new transformers, and therefore the cost of all this is still transferred to the poor consumer. Whatever it takes this country, Madam Speaker, to reduce the power and energy tariffs, it needs to be done. I support and thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity.
The Honorable Bensouda.
Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, I want to make my contribution on the motion that has been brought by Honorable Jane Gigiri on reduced cost of electricity. I think there is no shortcut about this. This is quite critical. This is quite urgent. This is quite clear that it needs to be looked into with all stakeholders who are in this field, beginning with the Managing Director of Kenya Power. And I want to call upon strongly the committee which deals with energy to call upon all of them who are involved in this so that the country Kenya is brought to the right cost of living. I want to say that normally when we are in Parliament, first of all, the contributors whom I've listened to have talked about industrialization in regard to the effect or the impact that the cost of increased electricity has in production. They've also talked about the investors who are in the country who may not continue with their investment because of the high cost of living. I want to make my contribution in support of reduced cost of electricity on the following facts. 1, in terms of security, 2, in terms of education, 3, in terms of human resource, 4, in terms of the local person, the Jua Kali artisan, the economic enterprises that we have in our counties. And when I'm talking now, I'm talking specifically to Homa Bay County. We know that there are issues that are there which are not addressed. We cannot be talking of a country of continued increased amount of cost on various things without looking or addressing the prerequisites that are underlining to what is causing the problem. In terms of the Jua Kali artisan, the increased cost of living, has Kenya Power tabled? Have they made known the reasons as to why the cost of electricity continue going high? As a country, as the 13th Parliament, in the manifesto that was given by the government, was to ensure that there is sustainable economic empowerment of our youths. That cannot be realized. I'm looking into the person who is the barbershop, the kinyozi boy, who wants to be empowered through what he's doing. Yet the units that he gets once he purchases is too high. Are we going to realize what we are talking about, youth empowerment? It is crazy. I look into the fishing industry. The people who are able to afford the big trucks and they bring the ice in coolers, we are able to produce this at our local areas. And so the cost of electricity must go down. I'm looking into the education sector, where we are talking about competency-based curriculum. The children here in gallery, not all of them are equal to those in the rural areas. There are some areas we are talking of going digital. We are talking of a digitalized economy, ICT. How are you going to realize this? The education committee equally should investigate and know what is the cost of electricity that the schools, primaries and secondary schools are meeting. Is it affordable? Is it sustainable? These are questions to ask. I'm talking about in terms of security. If we do not have adequate electricity across the country, whether we have the guns, whether we have the tear gas, when the electricity is not there, for operation, this cannot work. I'm talking about motivation of the human resource employed under the Kenya Power. It will take days for you to reach Kenya Power so that there are connections. Why do we talk of increased costs while the jobs that are supposed to do are not well managed? I'm saying the management of Kenya Power should up their game. If there is a problem with the transformer, does it mean that they don't have field officers to establish before we report to them? What is it that there is a gap? So I'm saying in the management issues also, let us address the real issues. Let us at all costs, plus the ministry, ensure that the cost of electricity come down and the sources which can improve and sustain provision of energy is realized. Otherwise, at this rate, we are just going to tell Kenyans we have failed as leaders, we cannot sustain the economy, there is no money, and so education cannot move, security cannot move, Juakali industry cannot move, and nothing can happen. Water is life, and so energy is life. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honorable Owen Baya, member for Kilifi North.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to contribute to this motion presented by the good, gracious lady, Jen. And in this motion, what is very important and very significant are the prayers that the Honorable Jen is asking this Parliament to do. One of them is that she wants the Departmental Committee on Energy to undertake an inquiry into the operations of Kenya Power. An inquiry. Now, this inquiry is very important because a lot of things that we will say here, we might say them and debate them and talk about them, but the answers to the problems that we have with Kenya Power is for us to go out there and find out what are the issues. We need to interrogate the bill. When you receive a bill, an electricity bill, there are so many costs, so many taxes, so many items. If you look at the cost of the unit that you pay, it is almost a quarter. But 3/4 of that bill is actually taxes and fuel and a lot of things that actually do not concern the production of the consumption of the power. That this committee must look at. We want to understand. I have received many power bills in my life, but when I look at it, I ask myself, what is it that I'm actually paying for? The second point that we need to look at is efficiency. Efficiency is a very important component of management. The more inefficient you are, the higher your cost of management, the more overheads. The more inefficient you are in terms of procurement, the more the costs are. But the question is, when these costs of management, poor management come in, who bears the cost? It is the consumer of power that bears the cost. So when we put a management team at Kenya Power, have we looked at their ability to manage effectively and efficiently? The two words, being effective, being efficient, have different meanings. You can be very effective, but not efficient, because you can produce what we want and the quality we want, but you might do it at the highest cost. You are being effective, but you're not being efficient. And that is the problem that we have at Kenya Power. Some of the management decisions that are being made are such that they look at just production of power or distribution of power without looking at the efficiency level that is required. Madam Speaker, this is something that the committee needs to do. Investigate, do an inquiry at Kenya Power to understand the efficiency level. At how much, what is the cost of 1 mega unit, 1 unit of power? What is the real cost? The real cost, you know, there could be just cost and the real cost. What is the real cost? In terms of the most efficient production. I read that there are other IPPs that produce power, sell power up to Kenya Power at 30 cents, others sell at 150. Why would that happen? Why would that happen? Why would others be paid more money than others, and yet who bears the cost of all this is still the consumer? So we have higher energy costs in this country, and we must look at it. Again, looking at leveraging on what the Honorable Jen Kagiri has said, investigations must be carried out. And one of the things that we need to look at is power generation costs. Power generation costs. There are many IPPs, independent power producers in this country. They have power contracts. They are reaping a lot of money. A lot of money. They are making a lot of money. But as they make a lot of money, the person who buys this power and evacuates it and gives it to the people has to pay for that cost. Eventually, the cost will come back to the common mwananchi there. The kinyozi that my friend Bensuda was talking about, the pumping for water, and all the other things. It is about how much money Kenya Power buys the power from the IPPs. Madam Speaker, we must have a paradigm shift in the management of power in this country. We need to have a fresh look, and this motion is timely. With the rising cost of living in this country, we need to look at everything and we need to move away from where power supply, if I want to supply power, it is at the realm of the supplier and not the demand. That because I'm producing power, I must sell, and I want to sell at my cost. And somebody on the other end actually agrees to buy the power at the whims of the person selling, at the price that he wants. Madam Speaker, the moment we reduce the cost of buying power from independent power producers, the cost of power in this country will come down. And that is something that the Committee on Energy needs to do. Madam Speaker, one of the things that we need to look at is a new economic architecture in this country. We have taken loans so that we can produce power. Huge loans. These loans must be paid for with high interest, bought at the dollar. Now, when this is done, the cost of everything of living in this country, because the person who produces maize meal, person who produces unga, uses power to produce that. If the cost of power is high, that cost will be loaded on the unga. If the cost of processing milk, when you want to process milk, you want to use power. The cost of milk will go high because power cost is high. If you want to build, cement manufacturers used power. And if we have to look at the development index of this country, probably one of the things that we need to look at is construction, the construction industry. But if there is higher cost in the construction industry because cement is produced at higher cost because of the power tariffs, it will even be difficult to own property in this country. So, Madam Speaker, what I would like us to do and urge the committee and to leverage on this motion that the Honorable gracious Lady Jen has brought is, we would like to get into this House a report, an investigative report, so that we understand, and this Parliament, when that report is produced, Madam Speaker, we need to have it here. That's why my advice to the Honorable Jane, after we pass this motion, I would like to request you to bring into this House a request for statement by the minister or by the committee. You request, and it is the only one. You see, the motion is very good as it is, this motion, very good as it is. But you may not elicit any reactions or elicit a report. So, because this is a motion, it's just a motion. But I would like to ask you to move forward and bring in a request for a statement or a petition to this House so that at the end of the day we receive a report. And that report will be debated and decisions will be made by this House. And that is the only way you can take this motion forward. If you don't do that, Honorable Jane, this motion will end here today and we'll pass a resolution. And I do not know how effective, I probably need advice from the clerks, but I would say that we need something else so that we can have a report come to this House, so that this House can debate that report and that report can be implemented by government. And if they don't implement, the Committee on Implementation can take it over so that they push the relevant government agency to implement. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Amina Mnyazi, member for Malindi.
Asante Madam Speaker kwa kunipatia fursa hii kuzungumza kwa niaba ya watu wa Malindi. Na mimi jambo la kwanza nataka nimshukuru dadangu Jane Kigiri kwa huu mswada wenye ambao ameweza kuuleta hapa. Mswada huu umeletwa hapa wakati mwafaka, Mheshimiwa Speaker, kwa sababu ni wakati huu ambao Wakenya wengi wanalalamika kuhusu maisha yalivyopanda juu. Mheshimiwa Speaker, mimi natoka sehemu za Malindi. Na Malindi ni mahali ambapo sisi tunategemea sana masuala ya utalii. Na inanisikitisha leo hii Mheshimiwa Speaker, ninapozunguka Malindi na kuona hoteli nyingi ndani ya Malindi yetu zimefungwa. Na hawa wawekezaji ukiwauliza sababu ni kwa nini wameweza kufunga hoteli hizo, bei ya stima inakuwa ni sababu kubwa kwa nini biashara leo hii ndani ya Malindi, na niko na imani katika Kenya nzima, inakuwa ni shida kufanya biashara kwa sababu ya bei ya stima. Ukiangalia bei ya stima katikati yetu sisi, nchi ya Uganda, nchi ya Rwanda na bara la Afrika nzima, utaona ya kwamba bei ya stima hapa ndani ya Kenya iko juu na imeweza kukimbiza watu saizi wanakimbilia katika nchi jirani ili kwenda kufanya biashara. Mheshimiwa Speaker, nataka niseme hivi, ukiritimba ama monopoly imekuwa ni donda sugu kwa masuala ya stima yetu hapa ndani ya Kenya. Ninavyokuambia Mheshimiwa Speaker, ufisadi na ukiritimba ndio ambao unaleta ama unadhororesha masuala ya stima hapa ndani ya Kenya yetu. Ukiritimba tukiendelea nao na tusipoangalia jinsi nyingine ama namna nyingine ya kuweza kupata stima, watu wetu bado sisi wataweza kwenda kuteseka. Mheshimiwa Speaker, ufisadi nao pia si jambo ambalo tunaweza tukalisahau, kwa sababu kuna watu ambao leo hii wameitisha transformer mwaka ama miaka miwili na ndani ya Malindi bado hawajaweza kupata. Wale ambao wanapata huduma kama hizo za transformer pale ndani ya KPLC, ni lazima uwe unajua watu, ni lazima uende ukahonge pesa ndio hizo transformer zipate kutoka wananchi waweze kutumia. Na hii ni ngumu Mheshimiwa Speaker, kwa sababu wananchi wanalipa ushuru na wanahitaji stima ili waweze kukidhi mahitaji ya maisha yao. Mheshimiwa Speaker, juzi kabla sijalipwa mshahara, mimi kama mbunge nilinunua tokens pale za shilingi 500. Na hili ni jambo lingine ambalo ni lazima tuangalie sisi kama wajumbe na kama serikali ni jinsi gani ambavyo tunaweza tukasaidia watu wetu. Katika ile shilingi 500 nilioilipia ya kununua stima Mheshimiwa Speaker, ni shilingi 188 peke yake zenye ambazo zimekwenda kununua token. Na katika hapo nimeweza kupata token 24 peke yake Mheshimiwa Speaker. Ina maana ya kwamba shilingi 312 zote zimeenda kwa charges ama kwa vitu venye ambavyo mpaka leo ama dakika hii mimi Mheshimiwa Speaker sielewi. Katika ile shilingi 312 tunajua kuna ushuru wenye ambao ni shilingi 58.16. Kuna jambo ambalo linaitwa fuel energy 175, forex charge shilingi 47, IPRA charges 0.73, WRA 0.26. Mheshimiwa Speaker, inflation adjustment watu wanachajiwa shilingi 20.76. Kwa hivyo yule Mkenya, yule mama mboga pale chini, uwezo wake yeye labda ni shilingi 500 kila wiki. Shilingi 500 unaponunua nayo token, haupati token ya 500, shilingi 188 peke yake ndio zinatumika kwa kununua token. Shilingi 312 Mheshimiwa Speaker zinaenda kwa matumizi tofauti yenye ambayo sisi kama Wakenya hatujajua umuhimu wake. Viongozi wenzangu, saizi sisi tunapambana na hali ngumu ya nchi yetu ya Kenya. Ni lazima tukae pamoja, tuweke vichwa pamoja, tuangalie ni jinsi gani venye ambavyo tunaweza kunasua watu wetu kwa hizi shida zenye ambazo wanapambana nazo Mheshimiwa Speaker. Kwa hayo machache na muunga mkono dadangu Jen, hivi leo umeweza kuleta mswada huu, na usimalizikie hapa. Kama ni watu wa KPLC, ni tuwafate na tuwaulize na watueleze ni vipi na ni kwa nini haya mambo sisi ambao tunapambana nao kama Wakenya yanakwenda vile ambavyo yako, na sisi hatufurahiki. Tunataka tulete mabadiliko. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa. I'd like to recognize in the presence of Mirera High School from Naivasha constituency, Nakuru County, seated at the Speaker's Gallery. I also recognize Kimutua Secondary School from Machakos Town constituency, Machakos County, seated at the Speaker's Gallery. I also wish to recognize, seated in the public gallery, the following schools: St. Bakhita Kiburia Girls from Kirinyaga East Constituency, Kirinyaga County. Secondly, Sitam Schools, Ngong from Kajiado North Constituency in Kajiado County. Thirdly, Dr. Livingston Primary School from Makadara Constituency, Nairobi County. And lastly, Nyangati Secondary School from Mwea East Constituency in Kirinyaga County. I think the time for debate is now over. It was 55 minutes. I'd like to call for the mover to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, because of the interest that members have shown in this motion, I will donate 2 minutes each to Honorable Irene Njoki, Honorable Richard Kilel, Honorable Mwengi Mutuse, and Honorable Fatuma Full Network. 2 minutes each.
Honorable Njoki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Jane, Honorable Jane, for bringing this motion. I rise to support. I rise to at least try and offer a few solutions that we can be able to reduce electricity cost in this country. And one, I had my colleague talking about charges in her bill of Warma. I want to request KPLC to check on double counting on Warma charges, to stop charging non-catchment areas. I want to request the Ministry of Energy to look into the quality performance of some of these IPPs. I am privileged to at least host 3 of these contractors, and it is very embarrassing when we were with the CS Churchill to note that some of them were given these contracts in 2013 and they have not been able to achieve that. And if they were able to achieve that, I can assure you we'll be having 105 megawatts of electricity already generated for us and ready to be used by Kenyans. I also want to request KPLC or Ministry of Energy to look into lowering diesel-generated cost, whereby diesel-generated costs are taking a whopping 67 billion into their budget. We also need to utilize our geothermal plants, that is renewable energy, which one of my friends and one of my colleagues has talked about. We also request the ministry to look into also fast-tracking construction of substations where lines are ready to transmit electricity, but substations have not been done. Madam Speaker, I want to also request the ministry to utilize other parastatals which can be able to generate energy, and one of those is Kibo Sugar, which can be
Honorable Kilel, I think you...
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker, for the time that you have given me to contribute to this motion. I just want to support the motion that was brought by Honorable Jane Gakiri. which is intended to bring the cost of power down in the country. I want to suggest some ways where we can make that one possible. One of them is actually utilizing the sunshine. We encourage the use of solar panels in areas where we have enough sunshine. We also have areas which are windy areas, like Ngong, so we can also utilize the wind power generators. We can also make the cost lower, maybe by renegotiating the cost of purchase of power from the independent power suppliers, which we can make it lower so that we can transfer the benefit to the citizens of Kenya. Finally, Madam Speaker, streamlining the government generating companies like Kenya Power and Kenyan. We can streamline them so that they can become efficient, and therefore they can do their operations in a very effective manner, and thus bringing the power down. So I stand to support the motion so that our people may get their
Honorable Mwangi Muturi.
Mwangi Mutuse. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mwangi Mutuse.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Honorable Jen Kagiri, for bringing this motion and for donating part of your time for me to make my contribution. I will make my contribution specifically on 3 issues. Number one, due to the high, as we look at the high cost of electricity, let us also look at the high cost of connection for new customers. Because in my constituency, I have seen customers, somebody has built a new home, the home is costing 400, 500,000, but when you apply to be connected by Kenya Power, you are given a quotation of 1.6 million shillings. Where do you get that money from? So as the committee seeks to look at the cost of electricity, let us just not look at the bills, let us also look at the cost of new connections. This country has been treated to a policy that was called last mile connection, where people were supposed to pay 15,000 for new connections and were able to pay in installments, but that has not happened on the ground. So we need to look at the cost of installation. Number two, as we look at the cost of electricity, we also need to unravel the conundrum. Customers are saying, Kenyans are saying that the cost of bills is very high. But Kenya Power, that is charging them and we are paying them religiously, is also registering losses. Every other time their financial statements are saying the company is making losses. Where is the money going to? The simplest answer and simplest imagination by any fair-thinking person is that the industry, the energy industry, must have been captured by cartels. And we must bring down the cartels so that the energy sector operates for the benefit of the public, but not for the benefit of private profiteers. I support the motion.
The Honorable Member for Migori, Honorable Fatuma Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. Most so thank you, Honorable Jen Kagiri, for bringing this motion and for donating your time to me. My points will be very clear. I have never understood also why, if you, for example, I stay in Lavington, and you find in Lavington, your bill is different from somebody who stays in Githurai. And probably I live in Lavington on loans, but somebody in Githurai has a very big home, yet that person would pay a lesser bill than the person living in Lavington, and it goes further up to Runda and other places. I wonder what criteria they use to justify this. Again, you find when Kenya Power claims that they've made losses, they transfer the losses to the customers, who are us, but they don't transfer the profit to us. They would even put it that they made a loss of this amount and they distribute it equally. Now to the Githurai person, it will be shared equally to the person living in Runda. But when it comes to profit, it's purely theirs. So I support this motion, and I believe, God willing, we'll succeed in bringing this motion up, and then we bring the price of electricity down for the Juakali people to be able to do their business comfortably. I support.
We proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to reply as follows. First, Madam Speaker, allow me to thank the honorable members of this House for the overwhelming support they've shown to this motion. Madam Speaker, as I was seated here and during the last session and listened to the members, I could actually tell these are the people's representatives, because whatever they spoke about is what each and every Kenyan is experiencing on the ground, and that is why we are putting in an effort to ensure that the cost of electricity must come down. Madam Speaker, I picked a few points from the honorable members, and of course, when I was making my submission, I spoke of the deeds and misdeeds of KPLC. Today, a lot has been raised about the connection problem, where people apply for transformers and they have to know somebody for those transformers to be installed. During my research, Madam Speaker, I even got to learn that Kenya Power and Lighting Company connects people but doesn't install a meter. So these people have somebody coming around their houses to collect money every month, and those are the losses I was speaking about. Honorable Speaker, this is what we have to bring an end to and ensure that the cost of electricity in this country has to go down. Madam Speaker, I beg to reply. Honorable Speaker, pursuant of Standing Order 53.3, I request that you defer putting of the question to the following day.
Okay, Honorable Kagiri, your request is approved. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, development of policy and funding for junior secondary schools.
Honorable members, upon the request of the member, this particular motion is deferred.
Order number 11, motion, establishment of a national cancer prevention and control fund.
Honorable members, also on this motion, the Honorable Timothy Toroitich has requested for this to be deferred to the following week.
Order number 12, motion, development and implementation of a child care program for children whose parents are in lawful custody.
Again, this upon the request of Honorable Brighton Yegon, this particular motion is deferred to the following week.
Order number 13, motion, national policy on the warming of school-going children.
Honorable members, also upon the request of Honorable Mashua Waithaka, this particular motion is deferred. Next motion.
Order number 14, motion, regulation of the betting industry.
The Honorable Duncan Mathenge.
Honorable Speaker, that aware that the Betting, Lotteries and Gaming Act, Cap 131, Laws of Kenya, provides for the regulation of the gambling industry, including the control of betting, lotteries and gaming in the country. Further aware that there is an emerging trend of media houses offering their audiences platform to participate in betting through lottery-style games, trivia shows, polls, contests, and other SMS-based gaming. Concerned that the trend was initially perceived as a harmless form of entertainment and audience engagement, but has since developed into a problem within our communities, leading to many Kenyans getting addicted to this form of gambling. That has led to lots of loss. Further concerned that there are numerous negative effects of this trend, including financial ruin, family breakups, high truancy in schools, resulting in high school dropout rates, and in some cases, suicide, noting that these games target individuals who can least afford to lose money, mainly the elderly, the youth, and low-income earners. Cognizant that the government has the responsibility of protecting citizens from negative social trends, including gambling, and the proliferation of these games is a violation of the Betting, Lotteries, and Gaming Act. Now, therefore, this House urges the national government through the relevant ministries and agencies to, 1, regulate the running of lotteries and other forms of betting disguised as polls, contests, and other SMS-based gaming and media houses. by media houses. And 2, ensure strict operationalization of the Betting, Lotteries, and Gaming Act and increase control and oversight of the betting industry. Madam Speaker, the media houses in this country are licensed to inform, educate, and bring news to Kenyans. However, in the history of this country, Kenyans have been left at the mercy of cartels that are exploiting them at every turn. Right from the onset of the infamous Desi pyramid scheme, other con games have happened. We have seen ordinary Kenyans lose their savings through Ekeza, Sacco, through Resedi developers, and many other such activities that are neither licensed nor regulated. In all these activities, media houses have been right at the center in terms of advertising and promoting such games. Apparently, the media houses seem to have been on a learning mission, and having learned from the best, they have now joined the gravy train and therefore promote their own lotteries against the license that is issued by the Communications Authority, while making sure that they are neither registered as betting firms and agencies by the Betting and Licensing and Control Board, and the Media Council, which is supposed to be a self-regulating body of the media houses, has kept absolute silence and even evaded responding to concerns raised by Kenyans. The Communications Authority has indeed acknowledged that they are raising concerns amongst Kenyans over the broadcasting of these lotteries and games on ICT platforms. However, the Media Council has used the excuse that because it appears before the Parliamentary Committee on Communication and ICT and answers questions, that apparently it has nothing to do with the misbehavior of its members. The Betting License and Control Board has evaded responding to the official position of the board as the licensing authority on these schemes. It is therefore my opinion, Madam Speaker, that Kenyans have been left at the hands of each and every Tom, Dick, and Harry who would want to exploit them by luring them into betting activities. The media houses, 14 of them, are very notorious for this. Every hour, they advertise a pay bill number where Kenyans are supposed to send bets in the tune of 100 Kenya shillings, in the promise that they will win a windfall cash of 30,000, 300,000, 250,000, 500,000, and even 1 million shillings every hour. When this is compounded against the over 200 licensed radio stations, which are broadcasting in vernacular languages, it means that this game is being spread to every corner of our country in every native language. One of the media houses is reputed to rake in as much as 10 million shillings a day on these betting activities. The betting activities start as early as 6 a.m. in the morning and end at midnight. These media houses have registered pay bill numbers and until numbers with Safaricom, but none of the media houses is bold enough to register the names, the pay bill numbers in the names of the media companies. They are using very different names and individuals to register these numbers, Madam Speaker. It is therefore clearly a con game that the media houses are running on Kenyans.
The Honorable Speaker is a biological male person.
and he's not intending to transit his gender.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand guided and corrected.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, Geshisho FM uses a pay bill number 760202 registered under Win Lotto. Inoro FM, pay bill number 5668989 registered under Piga Jeki. Kameme FM, pay bill number 15571 registered Dumu Kenya Limited. Maisha FM, pay bill number 2038 Ridhisha Jamii Limited. Radio Citizen, pay bill number 38348869 registered Roto Chojo. Kas FM, pay bill number 77700 registered Roto. Muga FM, pay bill number 290063 registered Shabiki. Wemwaro FM, pay bill number 38348869 Roto Chojo. Shamge FM, pay bill number 5668989 Piga Jeki. Ramogi FM, pay bill number 348869 Roto Chojo. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that this is disguise. Why would a blood name in the broadcasting industry register a pay bill number under a different name? Mr. Speaker, the fact that there is no control in this game has left our secondary school children and our young people in tertiary institutions addicted to betting under the guise of quick cash. Some of them even use money meant for school fees in these activities. No wonder we have very high truance rates in schools, absenteeism from schools, very high dropout rates, and even very high failure to complete education rates. Mr. Speaker, incidences of suicide that we have seen in the rise, especially the young people, and among family members, have a direct linkage to the financial ruin that families that can least afford to lose money are going through. It is important, Mr. Speaker, to note that this House, as a representative of the people, has a responsibility to safeguard the lives of Kenyans. We have a responsibility to ensure that the economic activities of certain farms are conducted within the law. Mr. Speaker, do these media houses pay tax under the same regime that betting farms are paying? Do they declare in their income statements to KRA that they are getting revenue from betting activities? My guess is no. It is therefore imperative that this House must stand in the gap and protect Kenyans from these negative activities. Media owners are the who is who in this country. They are billionaires. They can open casinos where we can go and bet. They cannot convert our airwaves into casinos and still fail to be licensed. Mr. Speaker, I submit and request the Honorable Kawajiku to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Where is Honorable Kawajiku? I'll give him the mic.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity so that I can support this motion being presented by Honorable Mathenge. And for sure, it is high time that we do something as the House and even as the government, because the number of people we are losing to betting, it is enormous. And we are trying as much as we should try as much as we can to regulate some of these media houses, because one of the jobs that they are doing is to, communicate. They have gotten their license with the Communication Authority of Kenya, but when you realize what they are doing behind the scene is to lure people into betting, Mr. Speaker. And one of these bettings is that these people are not regulated and they don't even pay tax to the Kenyan Revenue Authority. And you realize in the whole generations from 6 in the morning, as Honorable Mathenge has explained, to the evening, the only thing that they normally do is to rule people and the young people on how to bet. And sometimes because of lack of regulations, you realize, Mr. Speaker, that these people, they bet even 50 shillings, whereby the young people within our community can be able maybe probably to afford a 50 shillings to start betting. And when they induct millions of Kenyans and young people to betting, there is no way, there is no regulations or any form of knowing what are they supposed to do to make sure that they pick up the winners. So even the people that they purport to be winners, they are the same people probably that they have selected using their own means, and maybe probably through back the door, they're able even to correct the amount of money that this person have been able to win. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must come with the regulations and make sure that these media houses stop using the goodwill that they have with the public in terms of probably because someone understands a station like Kameme FM, a stations like Kinolo FM, because there is a lot of goodwill with the public outside there, then they take advantage of that goodwill without any regulations. And we must call out Communication Authority of Kenya. We must call out Kenya Revenue Authority to go after these companies and tell us who are the registered owners of these pay bills, because some of the media moguls within our public, they're the ones who are siphoning money from the public using the betting, Mr. Speaker. This has really played a major role with the young generation, because probably those people are not able to work because they believe if I bet with my 50 shillings, if I bet with my 100 shillings, I'll be able to win. This betting has totally damaged families, because at the end of the day, the kid is given money to, a student is given money by the parents to go to their school, to go to pay for school fees, to go to pay for the exam. And because they believe that probably after you have made your bet to these stations, you'll be able to win maybe 130,000 shillings or so. At the end of the day, they start doing that. And after the results are announced and probably the student is not a winner, you realize that these people are not able to go back to their family, and even this young generation commits suicide. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we are calling out the Kenya Revenue Authority, Commission of Authority of Kenya. We need to establish, even the Attorney General should come out and tell us who are these owners of these companies that are playing these betting activities within the media houses. If the work of the media is to air out or to do the media part of it, then they should leave the betting to be left to the betting and control and licensing board, so that they can be able to license those people who are doing the betting. We have raised these questions. I have also raised a question in the floor of the House. We never got any questions. We never got any answer from the Communication Authority of Kenya, and therefore I think it is high time we now move this motion, make sure that we are able to bring these people from the lockers where they have hidden themselves, who are these serious cartels that are playing with the minds of Kenyans within our republic, Mr. Speaker. These media houses, Mr. Speaker, they have, there is no way, and you realize that they target very small people and poor people within our community. You realize that 50 shillings or 30 shillings is something that maybe probably majority of our people within the community can be able to afford. But when you do it accumulatively, you will realize that these media houses are making a kill out of this betting, probably 10 or even 20 million within a day. But the amount of money that they are telling the people that this is the person who won, it is less maybe probably than 100 or 200,000 shillings. There must be law, there must be a regulation. We must come up and call these people out and now start making sure that they are regulated, so that if they declare that they are going to release certain amount of money after paying taxes, after paying the winners, and how they pick up even these winners, Mr. Speaker, is questionable. You realize part of the family members of these cartels, they are the one who probably wins, because there is no way you can be able to verify who is the winner, because they are using the radio station, Mr. Speaker. This has also gone some to an extent even to family breaking up, marriage and families, Mr. Speaker, because probably the man become addicted to betting, every coin, every shillings that he gets within his means, he normally put it to betting. And we must save our community and our young generations from this betting, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, that's why I want to second this motion and request that the House to also support, so that we can make sure we regulate these media houses, and so that we can make sure that we call out those people who are earning and milking millions and billions of money from Kenyans people without even paying tax, Mr. Speaker. I therefore second this motion.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that aware that the Betting, Lotteries and Gaming Act, Cap 131 of the laws of Kenya provides for the regulation of gambling industry, including the controlling of betting, lotteries and the gaming in the country. Further, aware that there is an emerging trend of media houses offering their audiences platforms to participate in betting through lottery-style games, trivia shows, polls, contests, and other SMS-based gaming, concerned that the trend was initially perceived as a harmless form of entertainment and audience engagement, but has since developed into a problem within our communities, leading to many Kenyans getting addicted to this form of gambling, and that has led to lots of loss. Further concerned that there are numerous negative effects of this trend, including financial ruin, family breakups, high truancy in schools resulting in high school dropout rates, and in some cases suicide, noting that these games target individuals who can least afford to lose money, mainly the elderly, the youth, and low-income earners, cognizant that the government has the responsibility of protecting citizens from negative social trends, including gambling, and that the proliferation of these games is a violation of the Betting, Lotteries and Gaming Act. Now, therefore, this House urges the national government, through the relevant ministries and agencies, to 1, regulate the running of lotteries and any other forms of betting disguised as polls, contests, and other SMS-based gaming by media houses, and 2, ensure strict operationalization of the Betting, Lotteries and Gaming Act and increased control and oversight of the betting industry. The Member of Parliament for Mombasa County, the Honorable Zamzam Chimba.
Asante sana Bwana Spika. Niweze kupongeza Mheshimiwa Mathenge kwa kuleta mjadala huu leo. Kwa hakika kamari imekuwa donda sugu katika taifa hili, na tunasema samaki mkunje angali mbichi. Tukiangalia watoto wetu katika mashule, watoto wameharibika. Hata nyumbani mama utafuta mahala pa kuficha kipochi chake. Manake watoto kufuatia kuona kwenye matelevisheni, kusikia kwenye maredio, kwenye mitandao, watoto wa skuli wameingia na wamezama katika kucheza kamari. Sisi Waislamu katika Qur'ani imekataza na imeharamisha kamari. Na mimi nataka nieleze juma hili leo kuwa chochote ambacho Mwenyezi Mungu amekichukia, chochote ambacho Mwenyezi Mungu amekikataza, ikiwa taifa itapitisha ama binadamu atafanya, basi madhara yatakayokuja huwa ni makubwa sana. Na mimi napenda kushukuru Mheshimiwa Mathenge kwa sababu amefunukiwa na ameona kuwa kamari imekuwa na madhara makubwa katika jamii kuliko faida. Na ningependa kuelezea vyombo vyetu vya habari. Mambo mengi mnatuelezea mazuri, kuna mambo mengi mnatufunza mazuri, tunawapongeza sana. Lakini kwa hili la kamari, tunawaombeni leo tuweze kulipinga kabisa kabisa. Manake utaona kuanzia saa 12 asubuhi mpaka saa 6 usiku ni mambo na masala ya kamari ambayo yanaweza kuonyeshwa kwenye matelevisheni na kusikizwa kwenye maredio. Wazee tena wanaosifika wamezama kwenye kamari mpaka wengine wameuza mashamba, watoto wamekosa urathi. Tukiangalia wanawake wengi sana utawapata hata wamekaa kwa kona, unasikia mimi na bet. Lakini huu ni wizi wa dhahiri kutoka katika hii industry. Ni wizi wa dhahiri kwa sababu wao wanatengeza mamilioni lakini Wakenya wanaolengwa na kamari ni wale Wakenya wanyonge ambao hali zao ni duni. Pengine ameenda mjengo, leo anaingizwa kwenye kamari, anaona leo nimeshinda shilingi 200, wacha niongezee nitashinda 500. Pengine siku hiyo amepata 10,000 katika mjengo, anaeka yote kwenye kamari, pesa zinaenda zote, wapata mtu ameamua kujitia kitanzi kwa sababu hali si hali katika maisha. Na ingekuwa ni uwezo wangu, na mimi nasema kama kiongozi katika jumba hili, mimi ningeweza kupinga kamari kabisa katika taifa hili. Tusiwe na mambo ya kamari kabisa, iwe kwa mtu mzima, iwe kwa mtoto, yote ina madhara kwa sisi sote. Kwa hiyo ingekuwa ni uwezo wangu, Bwana Spika, mimi ningeweza kukataa kamari kabisa, kama vile Mwenyezi Mungu na ninakataa mimi kama Mama Zamzam, kama Muislamu. Ninakataa kwa sababu dini yangu hairuhusu kamari. Na mimi nawaombeni viongozi mlioko hapa, ili jambo tulikataa kabisa. Kuna mambo mengi sana ya kujenga taifa. Mvua imekuja, jamani, hizi pesa zinazochezwa kamari tuziweke kwenye mashamba, tuweze kulima mashamba, tuweze kuvuna chakula, wananchi wanakufa na njaa, tuweze kuwekeza kwa vitu vya maana. Tuache kuingia kwa vitu ambavyo Mwenyezi Mungu amevilahani. Na ukiangalia watoto wa skuli, na mimi nawahusieni na wazazi kule nyumbani, waangalie watoto wao. Hii mambo ya kumpa mtoto simu, mtoto ni mdogo unampa simu, ndio maana anaingia kwenye zile sites ambazo zinamuonyesha wapi atacheza kamari, na huko anaingia katika wizi. Tutakuwa tunaua watoto wetu, lakini hatutibu pale mahali ugonjwa unaanzia. Wizi huanza na mchezo wa kamari, mwisho mtu akaingia akawa jambazi sugu. Kwa hiyo mimi katika taifa hii, mimi naomba na wizara husika. Jamani, kama kuna wizara inahusika na betting, mimi nasikitika sana, kwa sababu ingekuwa ni wizara ambayo iko kinyume na betting, wizara ambayo inakataa betting, wizara ambayo inaangalia wapi kuna chezo kamari, ni kasino, ni pale nyumbani, ni pale kwa TV, sijui ni ile ambao huwa tunaona wapi, ile ambao hata mimi nishawahi kuingia nikiwa mdogo, lakini Mwenyezi Mungu anisame. Ndio hapo nawaambia watoto huwa wanavutwa. Mtoto huwa anavutwa, na hii inakuwa kama vile addiction. Mtoto anashindwa kusoma, mtoto anakuwa amepotea njia, tunapata jamii inaangamia. Kwa hiyo mimi na support na naunga mkono mjadala huu wa leo, na napenda kuambia serikali, hali ya maisha ni ngumu. Tuache mambo ya betting. Zile pesa zinazoingia katika betting, tuangalie tuweza kufanya namna gani sisi tukainua uchumi wa taifa, stima ikarudi chini, bei ya maji ikarudi chini, bei ya chakula ikarudi chini, kuliko kupoteza pesa kwa vitu ambavyo havina maana. Na mimi naelezea serikali, wakati mwingine waweza kuona unakusanya ushuru, unakusanya hapa na pale, kumbe unachukua laana wewe unaiweka katika taifa yako. Ikiwa Mwenyezi Mungu amekataa kamari, basi ni dhahiri shairi kuwa serikali nayo pia iweze kupinga kamari. Sisi tunasema serikali ipinge kamari kabisa, hizi pesa ziweze kupelekwa kwa mambo ambayo ni ya maendeleo. Na mimi nafuatilia sana, kuna watoto ndani ya Mombasa County wameingia katika kamari. Watoto unawapata badala ya kwenda skuli wamekaa vichochoroni, bagi kwa mgongoni, lakini yuko na simu. Wazazi wangu wa Mombasa County, janga hili la kamari ni janga kubwa, japokuwa halionekani. Leo mtoto atakuletea 500, mimi napata hizi na beti, napata hizi tununue mboga. Wewe mama unapokea, lakini jua unamweka mtoto wako kwenye matatizo. Kesho atafungua kabati lako, atatoa dhahabu zako, atakwenda kuuza ili aweze kupata pesa za kufanya nini? Za kucheza kamari. Kesho kutu atafungua mlango wa jirani, ataangalia kipochi chake, atachukua, ataenda kucheza kamari. Siku inayofuata atakwenda kuvunja bank. Unampata kwenye kasino, manake wale wa kuvunja banki wakishamaliza shughuli zao, huwa wapata kule kwenye kasino watupa pesa kama njugu, manake hawakuzifanyia kazi, hawajui uchungu wa pesa, na yote yatokana na mambo ya kamari. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nafurahi leo kupata mwanya huu wa kuweza kupinga kabisa na kuweza kusupport mjadala wa Mheshimiwa Mathenge. Mwenyezi Mungu akuweke mheshimiwa. Ni katika mijadala ya nguvu sana katika jumba hili leo. Ni katika mjadala mkubwa sana katika taifa hili. Ni donda sugu ambalo lilikuwa limefumbiwa jicho na leo tunaliangazia, na uhakika na nyinyi waheshimiwa wenzangu mutaweza kulitilia pono na tuweze kulipinga ni mambo ya kamari, na hasa katika matelevisheni yetu. Nyinyi ni wazazi mnaotangaza, nyinyi mna watoto, tunawaombeni mambo ya kamari kwanza tuanze kutoa katika vyombo vya habari, kisha tuweze kuimaliza na sehemu nyingine yote. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mathenge, Parliament under Article 95 resolves issues of concern to the people. When a motion says, and this I'm raising with all honorable members, that this House urges, what are we resolving? I thought we should, begin crafting these motions in a way that will make the resolutions of Parliament actionable. I mean, when you say the House urges, beyond talking what do we achieve, I think it is something we should look into as we deliberate upon this motion and as we deal with other matters. Is Honorable Musa Sirma in the House? Honorable Joanna Ngeno is certainly not Honorable Musa Sirma. Honorable Farah Malim, former Deputy Speaker, you want to contribute?
Speaker, I want to add my voice into the ills of this habit. The previous speaker was very categorical that this thing, I believe in all faiths, I know in Islamic faith, is banned. It actually says in Arabic, rijsun min amal al-shaytan. It is the lowest morals of the devil. The devil is the devil, Lucifer. We know him to have no morals. He destroys humanity. Even within that low moral of the devil, or Lucifer. This is the lowest of the law. We have destroyed generations of this country. And the thing itself is compulsive. If you've ever heard of addiction, the alcohol addiction, the drugs addiction, the cat addiction, this is the most compelling, compulsive addiction. Once somebody gets into this habit, he doesn't know what he's doing. He will sell his properties, he will sell the school fees of his children, he will sell the food. I mean, he will use all those money for no other reason than to do betting or gambling for that matter. We had, in the early days, a way of protecting this because it was confined to casinos. And casinos were presumed to be the places where the rich people go and look for these services. And the government stood to make a little bit of money out of it. But now, because this thing has been liberalized to the extent in which you can bet 10 shillings, it has come to our homes. A country that has, I think, 67% of its own population living below the poverty line, where poverty is so widespread. But the media, we have become so powerfully savvy that we have one of the highest numbers of per capita access to mobile services. Highest, one of the highest. I believe on a per capita basis, maybe the highest in the continent. We have this, our children and everybody has access to this through the mobile phone. And because that access is there, then all these poor people see somebody who has made 1 million, 2 million shillings by betting 100 shillings or 200 shillings. And because they're living in such an awful, difficult life, that person says, maybe I could try that and make a jackpot. And that's how gambling feeds itself progressively. It continues that way. Eventually, you become addicted to it, and you actually steal to gamble. Not only do you use everything that you had yourself, I remember way back, many, many years back, there was an Indian gambler who had misused the last coin for his family. And you know, Indians have a culture in which the father pays the dowry for the daughter to get married. I think he went and took a loan to get his daughter married. But because he was a compulsive gambler, he went and gambled everything away and could not forgive himself. He chopped off his own right hand. It was in the media those days. So I think what we need now is a very powerful government regulation in this. The school dropouts are there. The low grades are there. The truancy is in so what do you call widespread, that quite often when you're called by somebody who's calling from a school and tells you that he can't pay the fees, ask him to give you the numbers of the parents, of his own parents. Maybe the fees was given to the child, but because he has gambled it all away in one way or the other, then they have to look for other places, like, you know, look for CDF. And you get occasionally and ask the parents and tell them how much money was given to this child. You realize that that child is playing games. We end up paying their fees straight to the schools, but nonetheless, this thing has had an effect across the society. Across the society. It is now happening even in villages, in the rural areas, in the very backward rural areas. Backward in the sense that there's no infrastructure, there's very little to show off for purposes of government services and other infrastructures. But still, because they have this smartphone, you find a young person who is in school or in college who has a problem raising 10,000 shillings or 5,000 shillings, even for the fare to get to the institution, even if the CDF had to pay the rest, but has got a smartphone that costs about 60,000, 70,000. And one of the things that is really feeding into these things is this kind of very, very bad behaviors. I also agree with the Speaker very well that Member of Parliament for Nyeri, I think the urging element of it is, in my opinion, I'm sure you're trying to look for us to use this as a way of creating a bill, a process of creating a bill from the House itself that controls this thing. And that's, in my opinion, one area. I'm happy with the way it is, but as the Speaker said, maybe you should have done a bit stronger than that. But nonetheless, don't leave at this stage. Proceed on and make sure that the bill is in place. If you need my assistance or you need the Speaker's assistance, we'll be willing to help you on this, because we really need to bring this country's future generations into certain sanity. This is a country in which, in the past, we used to say, in all societies, that the mothers and the women folk and the female gender in this country are the ones who are carrying the burden of this nation. Because you give a man money and he can use it for miraa, he can use it for drinking, he can use it for whatever he has to use it for. But you give a mother money, she takes it to her children. But if you bring this betting to the mother in the house and she decides, I'm suffering so hard, but maybe I can put in 100 shillings in here and have a chance of making 1 million shillings. Out of that desire to try and better the lot of her own family, she could easily get sucked into this compulsive behavior. And that also has got a problem. So this thing is, even the safe areas that we had before, our women folk and the mothers of this country but the ones who are holding the families and holding this nation. I can tell you where I come from. 70% of the people taking care of children and sending them to schools are women. Now, if that is going to again be embedded through this, we then have nothing. We then have nothing, because I haven't seen in my lifetime 10 women who chew mira. And I've seen probably 500,000 people who chew mira who are men. You probably see women who are drunkards, alcoholics, but they're so minuscule when you compare them to overall numbers. And then you look at all the families and the households here, how they've been taken care of by the female gender. Now you take this into that. This is already also craving or creeping into that. Very few safe zones that we had before. So the whole nation is going to be destroyed, in my opinion. So I think worse than Kumi, worse than Mira, worse than any of those social, ills that we had before, this new phenomena which is imported from outside, by the way, it comes from outside the country, which has come from outside the country. This, we have got to tame it in the soonest possible. Thank you.
What is out of order, Honorable Ndiki?
Mr. Speaker, sorry. I would like to ask my very good friend and senior to give us statistics proving that Mila is a bad substance. Because you have demonized Mila in 3 of your statements. Please provide statistical evidence to prove that Mila is entirely, if you misuse something, that does not mean that something is bad.
Yeah, Honorable Farah Malim, were you still contributing or you were done?
I was, no, just before I was done is when, but then you remember there was way back, there was a matter that was raised on this floor of the House, in which Martin Shikuku said Kanu is dead, and then Serenoi said there's no need to substantiate the obvious. I say that there's no need to substantiate the obvious, but if you want to see all those body of what you call research that was done, including this thing being banned in all the developed world. All the developed world. Mira is banned in Somalia, in Tanzania, it is banned in Uganda, it is banned in South Sudan, it is banned in all these countries. The only country that is not banned, I can agree with you because you come from a Mira growing zone. But tell me, go back to your own self now in real sense. And Speaker, can I take 1 more minute? 1 minute before I...
You know, the procedures of the House do not allow a member to stand on a point of order to reopen debate for a member who has concluded.
Yes. No,
and that is what you are doing with Honorable Ndikiri.
I was just before I concluded.
You will have 30 seconds to do so because members want to contribute.
Okay. And it is the all developed world. Go with Mira right now to Saudi Arabia. You'll rot in jail for the rest of your life. It's actually life imprisonment. So Mira is a very bad thing. It has destroyed your own people. Even the Mira growing areas, children don't go to school, and you know that very well. But I know you will get some few votes because of this. But let me tell you one thing.
Farah Malim and Honorable Rindikiri can persuade themselves on those issues beyond this motion. The Honorable Joanna Ngeno, MP for Emwadikiri.
The Mira debate is very interesting, Mr. Speaker. I had not known what kind of substance it is, but I was also thinking I could do it as a commercial farming. But now my brother here, the Speaker, who is our senior, has condemned it. But anyway, Mr. Speaker, I wish also to make a contribution of this particular debate. And like you've said, there were 2 motions. This one and another one which was dealing with the electricity, the cost of the electricity, which was actually urging the government. This one also is urging the government. I really wish, if you look at the contributions made by members, especially on that debate, that motion which was dealing with electricity, when you look at the contribution made by members, very substantive, very concrete matters that were discussed in that particular motion. But the unfortunate part of it is that motion will just end up in the shelves of room 7, or how do you call it? Table room. Same case with this one. So I really want to take the advice of the Speaker that members, when you look at these very fundamental motions that we bring to the House, which are very fundamental, like this one, let us turn it into a bill. Let us go and rewrite it into a bill so that we use the debate of this House, the contribution by members, to enrich that legal undertaking that we are going to do. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for that very serious advice. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, this idea of betting, I remember we did a very serious debate in this House last year, in the last Parliament, especially on betting companies, which one of them was even SportPesa. Mr. Speaker, it was a very serious debate, and heads rolled. And I remember very well, Mr. Speaker, that so many betting companies were removed. They were banned. Their licenses were withdrawn. Mr. Speaker, the same reason that we are discussing here today were the same reasons that we used at that particular moment to withdraw licenses of particular betting companies, which were actually destroying our generations. Mr. Speaker, I've heard the Deputy President of this country talking about illicit drinks, which is actually almost removing a whole generation of young men. Mr. Speaker, the same situation is happening with the betting companies, Mr. Speaker. The betting game in this country, Mr. Speaker, is actually also destroying almost a whole generation, Mr. Speaker. Even students who are in school, they don't even, they don't even take time to read anymore. Because their minds, they are waiting for the results, either in the radio, either in TV, either in their phones, whether they have won or not. Mr. Speaker, on personal level, or even on our capacity as members of Parliament. But, Mr. Speaker, there has been a lot of demands by these students, either those are in the universities or in colleges or in secondary schools, asking for some money, which, of course, we cannot substantiate. We do not know whether that money goes to school, but they will tell you, today they want this particular amount of money. Today the school wants this particular amount of money. And it's not big money, 500, 1,000, Mr. Speaker. So, but since we have learned that these monies, most of, 80% of these monies that we send to these particular students don't go to school. They go to betting. They load in their phones so that they can bet either what is in those particular betting. Mr. Speaker, I count myself lucky because I've never participated in any betting in my life, even when I was young. When people used to go to those cards where somebody is saying which card is for money, e card in your pesa, or something like that. I resisted to participate in those particular bettings because I knew it was going to attract me to those particular games, which I've always understood has nothing but waste your time, So, Mr. Speaker, I'm in full support of the member who introduced this particular motion to this House, that members of the TV stations and the radio stations that participate in betting must, we are not saying we should remove them from those particular things, but they must acquire licenses as betting companies, just like the ordinary betting companies outside those radio TV stations. They must also acquire licenses so that if they want to participate in betting, they must have the licenses for betting. Number two, they should also pay taxes, because how much money is actually spent on those particular betting debates or those betting activities? Millions of money, Mr. Speaker. And I believe those particular radio stations or TV stations do not pay taxes on betting. They pay taxes only for the activities of the TV station and the radio station. So, Mr. Speaker, I think these people should be given, if they want to proceed with betting, they should also pay taxes for those particular activities of betting, because that is where millions of money are being processed. And Mr. Speaker, if we want to control this particular betting on TV and radio stations, the taxes should be followed properly and it should be high, so that we avoid destroying a whole generation of young men and women. Number 3, Mr. Speaker, they should be registered as betting companies, so that if they want to participate in betting, they should abide by the regulations which are set in the acts of parliament or in law. Because those companies which are in betting right now, most of them have actually closed shop, because they don't follow, or whenever they don't follow the regulations, they are closed. Because the regulations are very strict, because the rules which are being used or which has been set by this House, Mr. Speaker, are so strict that most of them cannot abide by them, and therefore they close shop. We want the radio stations, we want the TV stations also to be registered, so that they are bound by the laws which are created in this House, Mr. Speaker, and so that when they make mistakes, Mr. Speaker, they can be punished using the same laws that are used to punish those other betting companies. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm in full support. But my advice is we should regulate as much as possible the betting in this country. There should be a situation, although, Mr. Speaker, you know, most of the betting are done through phones, but there should have been a regulation that whoever, like the casinos that we have in this country, Mr. Speaker, you cannot enter those casinos unless you are above a certain age. That was a very good regulation, Mr. Speaker. But nowadays, people don't go to casinos. They have casinos on their phones. So how do we regulate the participants in this particular betting? Because nowadays, people participate, whether you are 12 years, as long as you have known how to use your father's or your mother's phone or your brother's phone. You can Google, you can do whatever you can do. Mr. Speaker, my mother is over 90 years old, going around 100. But she has a phone. I bought her a phone. I normally send her money and pesa, and also airtime. But she has grandchildren, who when I send her money, after 3 days she tells me, there's no money in my phone. Why, Mr. Speaker? Those grandchildren have accessed the phone. They have a PIN number. They do betting in that phone. You know, Mr. Speaker, how do we regulate so that the young men who are above or who are below either the age of 20 or 25 do not participate in betting? How? Because these TV stations, these radio stations, they just allow access by anybody, whether you are 12 years, whether you are 10 years, whether you're 25 years, they allow access. How do we regulate that? So that is a question for the member who moved this motion. Please go and do research, bring this thing as a bill so that we can save our generations. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Dick Maungu.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity given to me to give my contributions on this important matter about betting in this country. Mr. Speaker, I will also wish to appreciate my good brother, Dr. Mathenge, for a well-thought bill on how we can regulate and maybe bring some order on betting in this country, Mr. Speaker. We have had for a long time betting companies do their business in this country. And these betting companies for long have been regulated by well-structured laws that govern the way they interact. But the mushrooming of some small betting companies, courtesy of the FM stations we have in this country, has resulted to abuse and to some extent, Mr. Speaker, an exposure to a vast majority of our people. The members in this House may not be culprits in this scheme of betting, Mr. Speaker, but betting, just like alcoholism, betting, just like pornography, is very, very addictive, Mr. Speaker. And there's no way as a country, we can allow the vulnerable people in our country to be exposed, to be used, sometimes to be, they are so much exposed, Mr. Speaker, because these radio stations have a platform through which they interact with their followers, they interact with the citizens. And it is through this platform, Mr. Speaker, that these betting companies have moved on to register. These radio stations have moved on to register betting firms that can easily be accessed, betting firms that can easily be able to induce, especially the young and the vulnerable people. This country suffers from great unemployment level, and the unemployment level is in the ages of 21 years to around 35 years, Mr. Speaker, most of whom are the youth. This group of people are very, very exposed. This group of people, Mr. Speaker, do not have a source of livelihood. They are almost hopeless because they find that they cannot secure stable employment. They cannot be able to secure a stable source of income. And because of the way the radio stations and these betting companies, Mr. Speaker, keep on inducing these people, they give them some false hope that out of this betting, Mr. Speaker, they'll get some money. But the challenge lies whereby some of the people betting are very young people, Mr. Speaker, who end up using their parents' phone, who end up using the phones of their siblings so as to get some money, Mr. Speaker. And it is true, some of these companies give some small tokens to the said members who end up again pumping the same money in drugs, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I stand to support this motion and request that the honorable member can research further and find, one, how do we structure the betting companies and the betting business in this country, because there's no way a radio station can today think of having a betting, being a betting company, having a paybill number which is not even licensed in their name, Mr. Speaker. KRA for some time has been chasing after how to raise money in this country. These people raised a lot of money. I keep on asking how much of this money goes back to the country as tax, Mr. Speaker, because we find that they'll be receiving so much shillings, as little as 20 shillings to a million people, Mr. Speaker. That comes to a lot of money. But I'm sure these pay bills which are not registered in the same business, Mr. Speaker, are a source of income to these people, and therefore this money is exempted from taxation, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the good member wish to dig deeper and find how the country benefits, how KRA has been able to net in these people, Mr. Speaker, and ensure that as much as these people are able to collect money, they are equally able to pay for the taxes that come from the same, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the betting age has been capped because a kid as young as 7 years, a kid as young as 10 years, a kid as young as 12 years who can access the phone of the parent, Mr. Speaker, can therefore be able to bet, can therefore place a bet and get some money, Mr. Speaker. We need to control this betting because at that formative age, these kids are not old enough to make independent decisions. These kids are not old enough, Mr. Speaker, to make independent decisions which are sober and upright, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, these radio stations and the betting firms are actually kind of brainwashing this group of people. And therefore, I stand to support this motion and request that, Mr. Speaker, the House stands strong and loud enough to condemn this kind of business. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Ikiri Mugambi, the MP for Buri.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this motion. I want to thank my friend Maina for coming up with this motion, but just like my colleagues have said, there is something that is missing in this motion, in the sense that we need to have an implementation framework within this motion, such that we don't just talk, but we carry it forward for implementation. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues have spoken on the heels of gambling in this country. I had the great opportunity to be in Las Vegas in the month of January, and I saw a completely different world with the different people, but one thing that I picked is they are professional gamblers. and there are also professional gamblers who are addicts. And around all the premises where there is gambling, we always find people who are zombies, drunk, drug addicted, people moving backward instead of moving forward. They don't know the difference between the day and the night. Mr. Speaker, the gambling culture is seriously cropping into our lifestyle. Mr. Speaker, the other day, I came across a policeman. He was gambling while on duty. I walked into his office, and the first thing that he was doing was gambling. So it's something that is seriously coming up into our lives. We all know we have had cases of suicide in this country associated with gambling. There is an emerging trend of petty thieves among our youth, stealing eggs, onions, and small things from their mothers so that they can get some money to buy illicit beer, drug, and bet. Whether we like it or not, this is what is emerging. Mr. Speaker, there is increasing conmanship associated with gambling. And I'm sure many members of Parliament have fallen victim of this petty conmanship, because now people are borrowing 500 shillings so that they can go and do gambling. And this money is borrowed at night, meaning our children leave home and go at night into the gambling opportunity areas. Mr. Speaker, we have heard about broken families because of gambling. It's a serious matter in this country. And Mr. Speaker, I know of girls who have fallen victim of being pregnant after being lured into gambling dens. Mr. Speaker, we are losing homes to bars. We are losing homes to towns. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that this motion has brought forth is the element of tax evasion. And it has also brought forth the failures of the government in terms of registration of companies. That's the office of the AG and Registrar of Companies. It has fallen, the Kenya Revenue Authority has totally failed in tax correction because they keep on sneezing where members of parliament are doing a small business. But this broad daylight in television stations, in radio stations, yet KLIA cannot go to those people until when members of parliament start making noise. I say this. KLIA has failed this country. Some departments of the government have failed this country. Some ministries have failed this country. We have been seeing people are not paying taxes. Unfortunately, it has now come out very clearly. About 70% of the companies, all the TV stations and radio stations that Mr. Maina has read, they all belong to Loyal Media and Media Max. The big boys in television and radio business. And these are the stations that are at the front of condemning the government for doing certain things irregularly. It's a shame. Loyal media companies,
Honorable
radio stations.
Honorable Rindikiri, I want us to be reminded always of our standing order provisions.
I start getting, Mr. Speaker.
We don't make adverse, comments about entities or persons who cannot defend themselves before the floor, unless there is a substantive motion thereon.
Mr. Speaker, I am picking this from the narratives that were given by the mover of the motion. Mr. Speaker, we all know Inoro, Kameme FM, Mero FM. He mentioned them, unless if I should not follow that route, I stand guided, but it was brought forth.
Honorable Ndikiri, the worst you can ever do is to contradict the speaker. Once you are ordered to take a particular line for good order of the House, let us keep to that. We proceed with the debate substantively.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, but I did not make it in bad faith. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious issue. Even in business practices, some companies are paying taxes, others are not paying taxes. It is discriminatory in terms of business practices, where some companies are given more due advantage than others. So I join my colleagues to saying that it is a very serious issue. We really need to be sober on this. We are losing a generation. And it's like, Mr. Speaker, we are now fighting alcohol, drugs, our girls' pregnancies. Now we have to come with another one called gambling. Every day there's something new coming to our society. And it's going to be a very serious matter unless we do serious consultation and regulations and controls. This country will end up being like some countries now we are seeing. It's like every day there is issue of murder, shooting, and all that kind of situation. So I want to ask honorable members, if we are to save this country, we must save our young people. We must save our young generation. We must speak this with one voice. Gambling needs to be regulated, and seriously regulated. We have to look at the underlying of the issue associated with gambling, stealing. We have the performance of our children in schools, etc., etc. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a very important motion. We really need to bring a lot of implementation concept into it, and I'm sure Mr. Maina will look at this. I thank you, because through this motion and many others, like the ones that we have been discussing this morning, we will be able to save our future generation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The MP for Kitutu Masaba, the Honorable Cliff Gisairu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. And I would like to thank Honorable Mathenge for bringing such a motion to the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, I will want to stick to the direction Duncan Mathenge gave us.
Honorable, that is the Member of Parliament for Migori County. Do approach and enter the House in the manner we do under the standing orders. Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope my 45 seconds will be compensated. Honorable Mathenge is quite specific on what we need to address here. The betting through the media houses. Mr. Speaker, we need to ask ourselves, what's the role of the media in the society? It's to inform, educate the society. But now the media houses have given themselves a bigger role, which is to create wealth through gambling. The target audience of the media is usually very wide. It reaches every home. It touches the most vulnerable. and they use the most enticing language to make every person listening to feel like a winner. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the regulated firms that do betting, you find that they don't have the same leeway, because if it's sports, the gambling is at the peak over the weekend when the sports activities are taking place. This is not the case with the media houses. For them, it is Monday through Sunday, 5 a.m. to midnight. Every hour, they have a different brand of a promotion they are doing. They camouflage it as a promotion, as a way of trying to support business. But this is usually not the case. How many people win in a month? How many people gambled? Honorable Mathenge, I think if this comes to be in a bill, we also need to say, if they are regulated, there has to be the number of hours that any media house should be allowed to conduct this betting activity. Also, there should be a minimum amount that any gambler should use to play. The act of coming that you can bet with 50 shillings makes it so easy and so cheap that everybody thinks he can do it. The problem is, this person does it 10 times in a day. So they never see the impact until it's too late. So there should be, for media houses betting, there should be a minimum amount. If someone sees it's 500, chances are you will have very few participants. But if you make it 50 shillings, you literally have even a class 8 child taking the grandmother's phone and trying their luck. The media should be a mirror of society. They should not be the ones trying to show the youth that it's easy to get rich. The get rich mentality has gotten into our youth. Therefore, you find in the villages, they have the small radios following and knowing that in the next hour is my chance to get rich. But instead, they get poorer every day because the little they had, they gamble it away. The media should help as leaders to try and fix society. And what is going on right now is not exactly that. What are the returns? Does the media declare how much they make from these betting games that they conduct? Mr. Speaker, it needs to be that all media houses, a portion of the benefits they make from this gambling should be donated to corporate social responsibility. Because this is not their core business, so whatever they get should be shared with the society where they got that money from. We should see them building schools with the same name they used on that betting activity. So they should be compelled that whatever they get from these poor and needy people goes back, a good chunk of it goes back to these poor and needy people. We need to see them offering bursaries, because no person of means gambles on these radio and TV stations. This is mostly by the most vulnerable of society. And our role as members of parliament, as the representatives of the people, is to ensure we protect these vulnerable people, so that the media, who should be our partner in developing society, does not lose traction and end up exploiting the very people we are supposed to protect. The tax laws should apply. They need to pay tax away from the media revenue earnings, and this should be made public so that it's clear to the poor people that while they gambled 100 shillings, someone at the end of the day made 10 million shillings. That for you to win, the chance is 1 in a million, which simply means you will never win. Once the youth know that the chance of winning is so slim, that the actual chance there is you will never win, then they will not gamble. Instead, they will use that money to start poultry farming. Keep some chicken. Do some kitchen garden. And use that money to develop yourself. Thanking Honorable Duncan Mathenge, and we hope that you'll take it a step forward so that we put this into law and make sure that the media play their role towards developing this country and protecting the society from the ills of gambling. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Gisairo. Honorable members, allow me to recognize the presence in the House of pupils from St. Bernard Primary School, Kajiado East in Kajiado County, and students from Kasuya Girls Secondary School, Kibwezi East, Makueni County. The students and the pupils are welcome to the National Assembly to learn. I don't know whether the members of parliament from those areas are in the House, but on behalf of the House, we welcome all the students and the teachers who are present as the future of the Kenyan society, as they learn. Thank you very much. Honorable Tim Wanyonyi, the Member of Parliament for Westlands.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me a chance to contribute to this motion. Honorable Speaker, this is a very, very important motion.
Honorable Rene Mayaka, are you on a point of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I just want you to also consider gender because you also know a lot about vetting. You want to speak. Thank you.
I know you, Honorable Rene, said that following that determination of the Supreme Court, gender of people is no longer known. So I don't know when Honorable Tim Wanyonyi confirmed it does not belong to the gender you imagine. Honorable Tim Wanyonyi, proceed.
Honorable, my gender is known, and I know I subscribe to the original creation, the way God created us, man and woman, yes, not the other people who are trying to bring in a third party, yes, which does not subscribe to nature.
So Honorable Tim Wanyonyi is an African male adult.
Yes.
And so after he contributes, the other gender will be considered. You may proceed.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I represent an urban constituency, and this gambling issue, this betting, Mr. Speaker, is really, really affecting our society. You come these days, Mr. Speaker, they have created small machines, a size of an ATM machine, Mr. Speaker, which are placed in local villages. And you find boys and girls, they sneak in, go and play that thing. There is even no age limit. It is allowed, anybody can play. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, we must save this generation from this. This betting, Mr. Speaker, if it's not regulated, is going to create a big, big problem in this society. The current generation, Mr. Speaker, we are witnessing people thinking that hard work is not necessary. You can just go and gamble and win millions of money. And this, Mr. Speaker, is the biggest monster that is consuming our young people. And we must find a way to regulate this so that only licensed betting companies, Mr. Speaker, can do this business, and with strict regulation as to age and the people who can participate, and also the timing of how they do it. Mr. Speaker, you find betting now has gone into areas which are very popular with people, especially sports and other things, Mr. Speaker. So that people now, even football, people don't watch football because they love football. They watch football because they're playing, they're gambling. They are trying to, you know, do something about which team is going to win and what, and on like that, Mr. Speaker. And we have seen this trend is going on, and you have seen many people. If you ask him, even the player of a team that is, you know, he doesn't know anybody, but he is betting on that. So we are just looking, Mr. Speaker, that this issue was even in this House in the last Parliament, and we debated it, and there was the issue of raising taxes so that they can discourage them. But I don't think that is the issue, because even if we raise taxes, these people, they mint a lot of money. And you remember, Mr. Speaker, in the 80s when we hosted all African Games here, there was an American conman who came here and pretended that he was going to bring Michael Jackson and others to come and perform before the games. And he collected millions of shillings, Mr. Speaker, and disappeared in a thin air. That the President Moi had to intervene and bring Franco from DRC Congo to come and save the situation. And this is, Mr. Speaker, we have seen foreigners who come here and pitch tent and do this thing of gambling. I don't know who licenses them, and use our media and all that. They drive it because they pay adverts in the media and all that, Mr. Speaker, so that they entice people, and people put money, and we have seen children who have even used school fees, and even just adults. A grown-up man who has taken a loan and go and start gambling, Mr. Speaker, and they lose and end up losing even their family property. So this is a very serious monster that we must control. And Mr. Speaker, I think this motion is very timely, and we need to follow it up and bring maybe a bill so that we can properly regulate this business in this country. Mr. Speaker, in other countries that are doing these things, they are properly regulated, and you don't see this thing being abused the way it is being done in this country. So I support this motion, and I believe that if we can regulate this thing, then we will be able to manage the affairs that go on, especially in our informal settlement, where people, and they target these people, Mr. Speaker, they target the poor people, because every shilling they have, they want to go and use it in this business. Somebody just imagining that he has 5,000 shillings and he can win 100,000, he can win 20,000. So he just goes and throws the money, and then they end up losing, and it becomes very bad. And this has ended up even ruining families, people committing suicide and on like that, Mr. Speaker. So I support, and I say thank you for giving me a chance to contribute, Mr. Speaker.
Is the MP for Kitui West, the Honorable Edith Nyanza, in the House? If she is saying she should proceed immediately, give her the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and sorry for the inconvenience. Let me take this opportunity to hear my views on this motion. First, congratulating the MP for this motion. It has come at the right time. And there was a time I even wanted to ask a question, but now he's put it in the right way by actually getting the facts together and bringing it as a motion. You notice that many radio stations, especially vernacular radio stations, are actually running gaming or betting activities with against the law. because they are not licensed and they do not have the requisite licenses to do so. You find that they're actually doing gaming. 80% of their time they are using on gaming and 20% on news. But they are supposed to they're actually licensed to do news and also advertisements and such like things. But most of the time they spend the time gaming. And this one has many Kenyans be victims because what they do is that they try to ask very simple questions and very obvious questions which anyone can answer. And by doing so, by asking such cheap questions, they attract the unsuspecting Kenyans who keep on trying, because especially during this time when we have people who are very desperate, these radio stations are taking advantage of these unsuspecting Kenyans who think that they can make money very quickly through gaming. With our youth, you find that our youth, they need a lot of education, they need a lot of counseling to be told that they will not get rich by getting money quickly, because that is what they are trying to do, because they think they will get money rich very quickly, and therefore they fall prey to these radio stations. So the gaming authorities should move swiftly and save Kenyans by coming up with the required regulations, required policy. The government should come up with a required policy so that we protect the unsuspecting Kenyans. So the radio stations are giving false hope, stealing. Actually, this one is daylight, stealing from unsuspecting Kenyans. So I would address the Kenyans and tell them that to actually stop losing money, to stop losing money through this gaming, because what they are following or what they are doing is actually false. It's not true. There is no money, and it's not easy to get that 100,000 you are being promised by these radio stations. Just work hard. Use that money for the right kind of use which you wanted to use it for. Don't speculate that you will get money. There is no money, because even the people they are announcing on the radio stations that they have won, if you follow, you will find that actually these are not real people. Maybe they are just their family members. Maybe they are just their friends, and they are just lying that you are going to get a lot of money. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion and say that the government should move swiftly to come up with the regulations and the right guidelines to these radio stations. In fact, they should stop this game right away so that we don't have many Kenyans lose their money. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I support the motion.
Thank you very much. The Honourable Member of Parliament for Kericho County, the Honourable Beatrice Kimei.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the motion that has been raised by Honorable Matenge. I want to appreciate the fact that it has come at the right time when Kenyans are looking for any way possible to get food on their table, any way possible to pay their bills, to pay school fees and all that. And Mr. Speaker, when you talk of betting, gambling, lottery and all that, it is something that personally I don't believe. Being a Christian, I want to quote what the Bible says in 1 Timothy 16, that says that the love of money is the root of all evil. This tells us that people would want to have easy money, to get money in a very simple way, in a very easy way. And they're not only getting money, somebody putting 10 shillings, 50 shillings, and they are expecting to get hundreds, millions, and even thousands. Mr. Speaker, this one has a very much negative impact on our society. I have very many examples, Mr. Speaker, back in Kericho. I remember this one of Lotto that came so strongly, and many women left their houses very early in the morning, go and do the same petting, missed it, and then when they get back home, they were beaten. I know of a very close neighbor of mine. I had to go and rescue her. I told the husband, please don't chase her away. She was being chased to her home because of that. I talked with her. She's able to do many other things, but she concentrated on that, losing a lot of money. Some even left their children not to cook for them. Lunchtime is there. They are still very busy petting. And you can imagine the impact of that. One lady, Mr. Speaker, used 20,000 of school fees, I believe, for that. But when she was asked, she said, I lost them. I don't know who came to the house and stole from me. But when we looked at it critically, it was out of this petting, Mr. Speaker. So this has caused a lot of agony among many, and people have not used the God-given opportunities of working in the farms, doing business, and doing empowerment of any form, but instead they look for easy money. To me, I look at it as robbery with no violence. The people who have this business, I don't know how much tax they pay. As much as I'm reading that, and there are regulations that are to be put in place by KRA so that 15% tax on petting. I don't know when implementation of this will be done. And then maybe 20% withhold from the winners. So this one has not taken any form. And I must say that before even we talk of that, we have to look at the social and the economic impact of this. We understand the cost of living is high, money, but now people have to work for the same. Petting is very addictive, and when people don't gain from it, what happens is that they get depressed, others talk of migraine headache, they are distressed, and all the anxieties or anxiety-related problems come to them. And I would say that this one, the government should, in a serious note, look at how to regulate. We've talked about the stations, radio stations, TV stations, that every day they are advertising on the same. I was in one of the stations some times back, and when I was talking about the youth, how the youth are actually how they have gone astray, I mentioned this petting as one of them, but whoever was in the station looked at me seriously, and then I withdrew because I knew my time will be, I actually knew I will not have time even to conclude whatever I was saying. When I asked later, I was told this is where we get pay, this is where we get something, but I wonder how my tax they pay out of this. So I would actually say that regulations concerning the same should be put in place. And then to add on that, Mr. Speaker, I should also say that school children should not be allowed to do the same. It should be regulated on what time petting starts and for what purpose, and how people can do it in a fair way. People call it's a jackpot, and some get a lot of money. as I do say that I'm not in support of the same, I also acknowledge that there are people who have actually benefited from the same. I know of one person who actually got 200 million. Of course, he became a millionaire in a day, but he used the money, I believe, positively. But now, I don't know how much tax he paid out of it, but imagining one person out of millions of Kenyans or hundreds and thousands, only one person benefit from the same. So I would say that as this House, we have to take it seriously, and I request the member who has brought it on the floor to take it into the next level so that it is not only a motion, it can be appeal, and that is how it can gain, it can actually be regulated. Children have dropped out of school. Others have poor performance because of waste of time. I know of children who have also been beaten. Reason, their domestic work has not been done because they go out to do the same. And families have broken. Parents have been stolen from by their children, and others steal from others. So I want to support this motion in a very strong way and say that we should look more into it, and I request the member to go deeper into that and bring it in as a bill, and we will support it. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I'm informed that we have members of Kakamega County Assembly in the Speaker's Gallery. We have the Honorable Silai Shienji, the Honorable James Etabale, the Honorable Amo Iliai, the Honorable Charles Anyona, the Honorable Samuel Segero, the Honorable Zurak Nyongeza, the Honorable Moses Mutundi, the Honorable Boniface Mabuka, the Honorable Donald Okumu, and the Honorable Joel Okwako. On behalf of the National Assembly of the Republic of Kenya and on my own behalf, I welcome you to the National Assembly during this tour of duty. Honorable Dorothy Ikiara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this very, very important motion that has been brought to the House by Honorable Mathenge, MP Nyeri Town. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is good to note that this motion is very timely because it's speaking about the ban of media houses from running lottery and prize money competition. Mr. Speaker, it is worth noting that the media houses of today, they have lost their primary objective. I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, because in the late 80s, 70s, we knew that if it's lunch hour, we would run to the media stations to hear the latest news, what is happening across the country. And thereafter, we would hear the radio stations singing patriot. Every few sentences, there is an interlude of betting, something being brought that people are told, now put 50 shillings and you get 100,000 or whatever amount of money. and in the background you hear somebody screaming, I have gotten my 100,000. So even if Mama Mboga is preparing to prepare dinner for her children, and she has 100 shillings in her phone, what she'll turn back and do, it is to take the 50 shillings, remove 50, bet, expecting the 100,000, which may never forthcome, and at the end of it all, the children sleep hungry. Mr. Speaker, according to the Communication Authority of Kenya, this country has stations that are mostly ethical. So these messages are communicated in the language that even the Mama Mboga, even the person who does not understand any other language will understand. Mr. Speaker, and instead of these stations talking objectively of things that are happening in the country, they have become a recipe for making our families poorer. Families have become more poorer because they want to get rich quickly and they are enticed to easy money. Mr. Speaker, sir, this has become an economic activity of easy making money from some unscrupulous individuals in this country. What I would say, Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely immoral, it is ungodly, it is not right for somebody to make money out of the vulnerable, the most vulnerable members of the society. Mr. Speaker, sir, these media houses have gone even further, and far from what we are thinking, that it is only the young generation which is affected by this, it is not true. People are taking even their pensions and they end up going to this betting and gambling game. Mr. Speaker, a survey done by the Central Bank and by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, it indicates that the elderly people bet 49 times a week. On average, this is much higher than the 41.4 of all the other age groups. And what this tells us, Mr. Speaker, these lotteries and prize money are conducted mostly by the television and radio stations. And vernacular stations, as I had indicated earlier, are the most notorious on this. And this is why, Mr. Speaker, most of the people who even take their pension after falling prey and victims of this, they end up paupers and they go to an early grave. Mr. Speaker, I want to state that this country is contending with a raft of issues that are affecting our youth very, very negatively. We are talking of drugs, we are talking of beer, we are talking of very many other negative things that our youth have been engaged in. And these vices are so deeply entrenched in our society that they are not going to spare any of us. School-going children, we have had, there are a lot of dropouts. We have had, there is rampant absenteeism in our schools. We know too well that all these cumulate to negative effects in our society. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to support this motion, and I wish to say, ask Honorable Madenge, let us escalate it at another level so that we don't just talk here, because it is evident that in the year 2021, the Betting and Licensing Board was given a green light to stop this vice, but it seems that they don't have the powers to do that. Mr. Speaker, I support and say these negative social trends in our society must stop. It is us, this House, that has the powers to bring this vice to an end. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Parliament for Busia County, the Honorable Catherine Omanya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would love to oppose this motion because any institution that is legally registered here, if there's anything they are doing illegal, then there can be a way of regulating. I look at our football clubs that lack anybody to hold them, and I find that these betting institutions are the ones that are funding them. Otherwise, we would be killing our talented young men and women who are in these various games out there. Secondly, anything that everybody with common sense has, before they engage in it, they should be mature enough and disciplined enough to go into it. I don't think anybody puts a gun on anyone to go and gamble. Gambling is a choice. It's not a must. It's not a priority of anybody. So it's a choice. If anyone chooses to gamble and maybe one day wake up to be a millionaire, then be it. The thing here is discipline. And also the Bible says it is wrong to be covetous. So if somebody wants to be a millionaire within a second and tries their way out and doesn't get it there, you don't have to point at the person who brought the game. It is the person who went to play the game. So I think there are individuals in this country that are being targeted, because I've had one of our honorable member mention Royal Media and MediaMax. And I thought this thing was a motion that does not have any ill motives behind it. But immediately he mentioned, then I realized that it's not actually the gambling. It's not the betting. It is some personalities in this country that are being targeted. And it's bad manners for anyone to be in power and want to oppress or finish the other, because what you set up might be a trap for you yourself. So we should be very careful. Betting companies pay their taxes. If we must regulate, maybe we can up it a little so that they pay higher, because we see the participants are many across even Africa or the world, and maybe what they give back is what we should be looking into, the auditing. We should be looking into how much do they give back to the country. But we all, as leaders, have a role into looking after our kids, what they are getting into. Many times, I do not sleep until I go through the history of my phone to monitor what my baby or my nephews or nieces have been looking into. So it is just a way of people being very lazy. What will your child be doing betting, and you are there? If they are trying those things, just stop them. So let us not throw punches and escape from our responsibilities as parents and start saying it is this gambling, it is that. And also, I think in the regulations, they would add and say, the way they say it to people who drink, that you engage in it at your own risk or something like that. It's a little warning to it. But do not kill any institutions that are here, that are helping our sports, our games. They are helping in one way or another in charitable activities. We see them helping out. And that is all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Phyllis Berto, the MP for Moiben.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to add my voice on this motion of gambling from Honorable Madenge. Mr. Speaker, gambling, also considered as pathological gambling, is a situation, is not a bad idea, but the problem comes in when it becomes addictive. And when it becomes an addiction, it is just like any other, it's just like drugs it's just like alcohol, which the society is trying to fight as per now. For example, the President of Kenya and the Deputy President are leading a team to sensitize, with NACADA, are working out a way of stopping or the use of drugs and the use of illicit brews, which have become rampant in Kenya and which have ruined our young generation, that if we are not careful, we will not have a generation in future as Kenya. That is where the problem is. So if this gambling is not censored, it becomes problematic. Once upon a time, when I used to teach at the university, you would walk to a classroom and find empty lecture rooms because some students are busy gambling. Most of them wasted away the fee they were given by their parents. Most of them sold everything, sold their college earthly possessions for the sake of gambling. We saw parents coming to the graduation, hoping that their kids were supposed to be in the graduation list, but they have dropped out. They have not been able to pay fees. They have never been to classes because they were gambling. When gambling becomes an addiction, that is where the problem comes about. We have had cases of Fulisa. Young people, you find them having more than 20 SIM cards because they are getting money, getting small loans from Fulisa to gamble. Isn't that a problem? So my take is, this gambling has to be regulated before it escalates to become an addiction, and more so to young people. When they start participating in this game, they lose concentration. They don't, others drop out of school. Others become petty thieves because they want to get little money. We've heard of stories of young people taking money from their parents' phones, and many other stories which are not very good for our society. Mr. Speaker, I would say that if this business is regulated, it is not enough to tax them, because taxation is going to, if we tax, it's like we are legitimizing the business anyway. We have to regulate them so that we censor and make sure those people who participate, they give an age gap, for example, of those who are supposed to participate in the gambling. And we bring clear regulations on how the game should be done. Otherwise, I'm also a member of parliament who has a rural constituency and urban. And you'll find that in the urban side of my constituency, there are so many gambling centers. People are reaping from very young people. We've had relationships breaking because the money, which is supposed to be for families, have been diverted to do other things like gambling. So what my take is, this motion is a very good motion. We should look at it critically and ensure we only delete what is not relevant, what is destructive, but we leave the business. We give the we press the regulator to get a bit serious and not just regulate anybody, not just give a license anyone, because they want to be in business, because they want to make money. Just like those the organizations which are regulating these, those who regulate the supply of alcohol and drugs in our society, we'll find that some county governments are very fast in giving businesses licenses, regardless of what kind of alcohol or what kind of alcohol they are selling. Some just get a license and they go ahead to do illicit brews, and that eventually people get addicted and becomes problematic. So I think we should lump all of them and work closely to see which one is a good business and which one is not. If measures are put in place, I think everybody will be happy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Irene Mayaka, nominated MP.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the Honorable Dan for bringing this motion. And I just want to give a different angle of what we need to look at in this particular motion. Because, Honorable Speaker, anything in this world that has an illicit tag to it becomes automatically sweet for people to want to go for it. Be it prostitution, be it alcohol, be it betting, anything that has that tag. So what we need to do, in essence, is, for as long as this
Did
betting...
you say, what did you say is illicit constitution, or what did I hear you say?
There's a P in front. I said prostitution.
Oh,
Honorable
prostitution.
Speaker. Yes.
Okay.
So what I want the approach I want us to take is that in formulating these regulations, we have to have a give and take approach in it. And the reason why I say that, and just to add to what my sister has said, is that some of these betting companies have really supported our sports. Yeah? Just the other day, Harambee Starlets were in training for a whole month, and they could not even go and attend a friendly against Albania because they did not have sufficient funds. But if you look at some of the betting companies, like for example, Mozart supports Homeboys FC, Betika supports Police FC and AFC, SportPesa supports Moranga and Gor Mahia. We have sports companies and clubs that are actually suffering right now, and we have to raise funds on a weekly basis, like Shabana from Back at Home, who are doing extremely well, but they don't have anyone to support because the government doesn't have enough sufficient funds to support our sports. So what we also need to do in our regulations is to look at a way that ensures that some of these betting companies that are actually supporting our sports, that are gaining revenue from it and supporting our sports, how are we also supporting them just to encourage them as well? Because regulation is good, yes, but at the same time, it has to be a regulation that also seeks to find out how are we also giving back. Because when you create laws in this country, they have to be laws that also encourage investments and revenue earning. Number two, the media companies. Because a lot of media companies, when you look at it right now, Honorable Speaker, be it FM stations or TV stations, they've gone into that space. Why? Because a lot of people are no longer doing advertisements on media. People don't have money. We are living in extremely difficult times. So for media houses, they found that this is one way that they can actually use to raise revenue for themselves. So what these regulations need to do is to ensure, because I am certain that every media company in this country has a legal office attached to it, is to ensure that the legal fraternities and departments in these radio stations and TV stations are making sure that the laws that we have in place are properly put in place to ensure that they also protect the consumers of this. Honorable Speaker, if you look at the Sports Amendment Bill of 2018, and in particular Section 12(1)(2) of A and B, it actually states very clearly that proceeds of any sports lottery taxes levied on betting companies should ideally go to the sports fund, so that then the sports fund can assist to make sure that the different teams that we have in this country are supported. The question we should be asking ourselves is this really happening? Has KRA given audit records to the sports committee to ensure that this actually happens? And I saw the sports chair here, Mr. Chair, and I really wanted him to listen to this, because this is another angle that we should be looking at. So when we're reading both acts, the Lottery and Betting Act and the Sports Act, we need to make sure that it covers ground sufficiently so that it helps this country. Mr. Speaker, one of the games that earned this, the sports Gor Mahia the highest source of revenue was a game that they played against Everton in May of 2019. And that particular game was a full stadium in Kasarani. I remember I was in attendance. That particular game, through SportsPesa, who did extreme marketing online, on social media, on radio, on TV, was full capacity. And full capacity because it ensured that people paid for the game, people put a bet to either support Everton or Gor Mahia, and because of that, the team was able to actually pay allowances for its players and coaches, and they were able to actually serve the sports fraternity. So what I want us to do is, let's not only look at the bad side of gambling, because for as much as we can sit here all day and say that we want people to stop gambling, we want people to stop putting money in gambling, there's nothing we can do about it. People will still go out there and gamble. People will still go out there and put money into these betting companies. What we need to do is make sure, are we milking enough from these different companies to ensure that the government also has an extra source of revenue to support some of these facilities that they cannot support. Right now in this country, Honorable Speaker, we don't even have medical insurance for our sporting men and women. We have sporting men and women out there who have retired prematurely because they're not able to get proper medical facility. So let's not come out and injure the people who are at least trying their best to assist in whichever way that they can to make sure that this continues, even as we go out to seek solutions. So, Honorable Speaker, I just want to encourage my colleague Dan, Honorable Dan from Nyeri, and tell him that as we are looking at the regulations that we want to take care of, let's make sure that we are also protecting our people from the same. And personally, because one of the reasons I said when I came into this parliament was that I will always look out for sports funds and sports players, because sports bring people together. So Honorable Dan, together with the committee that is going to work on this, let's look at other ways. Let's even go into public participation and see how Wananchi can also give us ideas on how we can enhance this and make it better for our people. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. I arise to support the motion that gambling should be regulated in this country. Mr. Speaker, if we look at the vices vis-a-vis the advantages of gambling in this country, you will realize that the effect of the gambling on the negative are so immense. And this is the reason as to why we should make sure that gambling or betting in this country is regulated in a manner that it is not so disadvantageous to the young men and women who are mostly vulnerable due to the rampant effect of gambling. Today, Mr. Speaker, young families are unbreaking due to mistrust related to gambling, whereby either the wife or the husband is immensely indulged in gambling. So many Kenyans, particularly the young ones, are greatly impoverished due to gambling. The insatiable lust, the insatiable need for money have made so many young people to think that by doing betting, they will be millionaires in a fortnight. This is the wrong notion. This is the wrong thinking that has made people to suffer due to gambling. The mostly affected sector is the education sector, Mr. Speaker. Today, most of the students from the university are dropping out of school because they are deeply indulged in gambling. And this is the high time this honorable house should get ways and measures to make sure that we contain betting in this country for the posterity of our young generation. So many vulnerable school-going kids, due to the negative publicity that is done by the media houses, the very sweet ones, very enticing ones, make them think that if you indulge in betting by a day or so, or by a month, you will be a millionaire in this country. Just a few who has benefited from this, as it has been alluded, you will hear very sweet ones, music, to make sure that the listeners are made to move to this kind of business, which is not rewarding at all, as many people may think. So what we are saying is that one is also a kind of drug that is killing, that is eating to our society that needs to be very productive. Mr. Speaker, therefore, I'm calling the mover on Duncan to go ahead and have it as a bill so that we can discuss it and see the mechanisms, the best way possible we can make sure that we suppress this growing kind of a habit that might eat onto our very, very useful sector of our society if not clearly averted. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I am saying the narrative that's being peddled by these houses to make sure that this kind of business drives for their benefit is not helping the young Kenyans and even the people who are greatly indulged in it. Today, even the football that we talk about, you hear fans talking about Goma here, talking about others, and mainly the international players. Whenever you hear them making noise, whenever they are saying we are supporting Arsenal, we are supporting Manchester, there is that element of gambling. And this is the reason as to why we are saying, as a country, we must get the mechanism and ways to regulate this growing kind of a menace. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, there will be 55 minutes remaining before debate of this motion concludes. I'm grateful there is a lot of interest in the motion. I saw Honorable Dan Wanyama, the chair in charge of sports. I don't know why he stepped out. But the next time we'll sit over this matter, we'll have that time to contribute. And I want to thank the members for being very patient. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, at the time being 1:00 p.m., this House stands adjourned until today, Wednesday, the 12th day of April 2023, at 2:30 p.m.